Welcome back to Watch the Bookerman and to episode number 87 of Paul Heyman's TNA, and tonight is the beginning of the new era. TNA, long since associated with Spike TV, moves to MTV under the same Viacom umbrella but a much bigger broadcaster, so tonight we have to deliver with a really big show on this debut on the new network, and we begin with the Kings of Wrestling walking down to the ring. There's no introduction from the commentators because we want to get straight into this first segment. Once they're in the ring, of course, Mauro and Taz will welcome viewers to the show, but we want to get straight to the point with Chris Hero saying that they're here exactly where Sting wanted them, so where is the icon? As promised last week, Sting comes down to the ring, going face to face with the Kings of Wrestling. He's outnumbered, and Hero and Castagnoli sort of look to one another, feeling like today may be their lucky day, putting their championships down on the canvas. The Kings of Wrestling look ready to take out their anger on Sting. When the lights go down, usually at the trick of Sting himself, he's already in the ring, but when the lights come back up, he is joined by the returning Jeff Hardy, another man who was taken out by the Kings of Wrestling and Tyler Black, not seen in the last 6 months, and the two probably biggest victims of the new age, Hardy and Sting, join forces and fight off the tag team champions, sending their adversaries packing. Jeff Hardy and Sting then stand tall as the commentators remind us, or for new viewers, let them know that both of these men lost months of their careers due to the actions of the New Age, and they are back for revenge. That is a huge way to start the show, and the commentators are sure to put that over. Sting returned at Sacrifice, now Jeff Hardy is back, and they've got their sights set on the Kings of Wrestling. We then return to the first match, and we wanted to put one of our major storylines as the first match of this new era show, Mickie James versus Tara in a no disqualifications match. These two had a Falls Count Anywhere match in TNA in reality, and we're looking for a similar type of match to that, albeit it doesn't end in the bathroom like that one did, and Mickie defeats Tara in the middle of the ring, 14 minutes and 2 seconds, so a long competitive match, but a Mickie DT is enough for her to secure the victory. Both women very tired, very fatigued towards the end of the match, but Mickie just does enough to get her second straight victory over Tara since Tara turned on her. A 62 is a decent rating for that match, and while she is barely in a condition to stand, Mickie is held back to her feet by the referee post-match. While the Falls Count Anywhere match with Tara had taken a lot out of her, the exhausted Mickie James still managed to request a microphone from ringside after the match. Mickie says that she isn't going to let Tara stop her from getting this off her chest for 2 weeks in a row. She feels awful at the moment, but she's sure that she'll be back to 100% for Slammiversary. And with that show in mind, she officially challenges Sara Del Rey to defend the Knockouts Championship against her on that show. So a big Knockouts match. We've done it once before, but the story has developed further since then, and Mickie has made no secret, even when she was a Knockouts Tag Team Champion, that her ultimate ambition in TNA is to become the Knockouts Champion, and if Sara Del Rey accepts that challenge, she'll get exactly that at Slammiversary. We then head to footage from earlier today. Austin Aries and the American Wolves are shown arriving at the building. With them is another man who has his head covered by his suit jacket as he enters the building. Clearly he doesn't want to be seen. Aries speaks to the cameras as they walk by, telling them that they don't need to know who he is yet, but Paul Heyman is going to find out soon. Back to the commentators, Mauro and Taz speculate who this man may be and why his identity was concealed. What's his business with Paul Heyman? All the obvious questions. They also promote tonight's main event as AJ Styles and Wrestling's Greatest Tag Team will face those three men on screen, Austin Aries and the Wolves, who of course all represent Ring of Honor, and I suppose it's a little bit overdue, 21 segments. I said that I was doing it so I didn't have the shock turn of it, because really they should have come in as heels anyway. I've allowed it to probably go on a little bit too long, but complete success for both of the turns, and that means that tonight's main event should hopefully gain a couple of points. We then wanted to showcase the X Division. That's something I'm looking to do throughout the show. I did it in the very first episode of this series, and I kind of want to copy that in a way, and this is how far the company's come in 18 months. We had the Knockouts match earlier, which I thought again, if it's new viewers seeing that from the Knockouts compared to what you might be seeing in other major promotions around this time, it's going to catch your eye. And likewise, the in-ring action between Alex Shelley and Tyler Black in what is a non-title match, with the X Division champion coming out on top, defeating Shelley in 15 minutes and 25 with a blackout stomp. It's a good match with decent performances from both of them, but again, I think if you were just tuning in for the first time and you saw these two, you'd be very impressed with what Alex Shelley and Tyler Black were capable of. Another highly competitive match, as it always is in the X Division. It's about the work rate, it's about the intensity in the ring, and Tyler Black has overcome another competitor, having his arm raised in the ring. The X Division champion raises his title high above his head as the commentators promote his upcoming defense at Slammiversary against Loki. His opponent for that pay-per-view will be in action this Saturday on TNA Evolve. We then get a promo package from James Mitchell, and he addresses the viewers because he's been requested by TNA to give Abyss's response to what happened at Sacrifice. They weren't on the show last week. A little bit of time for that to sink in, to spotlight Bryan Danielson, but James Mitchell, like Abyss, has nothing to say. Bryan Danielson, in that Monsters Ball match, did what no other man in this company has ever been able to do. And how does Abyss feel about that? Mitchell doesn't give an answer, but the camera pans to show the monster sat on the floor, his arms around his knees. He is rocking back and forth. This has clearly put Abyss in a very, very dark place. He never expected this to happen. James Mitchell never expected this to happen. In fact, Bryan Danielson was just about the only person who thought he could beat Abyss in the Monsters Ball, and it's just further putting over how big of a win that was for him and the effect that it's had on his opponent. We then get Paul Heyman coming down to the ring. This is the end of the first hour, and he is open to listen to the man that Austin Aries has promised to bring with him this week. A 90 rated segment is absolutely brilliant. Really, really happy with that. And coming out from the back, that man, the other half of this segment, is Steve Corino. Heyman speaks, but Corino tells him to be quiet as he introduces himself to the viewers who may not be that familiar with him. For Aries, this is personal. But for Corino, this is about ending what Paul Heyman is trying to accomplish. Paul used to be the innovator. He used to be the revolutionary. But when he came to TNA, his grand vision was to look at what ROH was doing and copy it. That doesn't seem very innovative to him. In fact, Steve Corino says that this proves that Paul Heyman is a liar and a hypocrite. 10 years ago, he stood inside Vince McMahon's ring and lectured him for doing exactly what he has done to Ring of Honor. Corino has waited a long time to tell Paul Heyman, I hate your guts. Everything that Ring of Honor built for almost a decade was taken away by Paul Heyman. He destroyed it in under a year. And it wasn't just talent that Paul Heyman stole, because ROH died, and 2 weeks later, Evolve pops up. The next step in professional wrestling, according to Paul Heyman and his minions. But when that show debuted, all he saw was Ring of Honor rebranded. But Steve also knows something that a lot of people don't know, because he knows that this buyout wasn't quite as simple as TNA has presented it. Not everybody was sure about the viability of buying out Ring of Honor, and that's why Paul, along with TNA, had to convince some investors to get on board to get the deal done. And Corino has a message from one of those investors, a man who is not happy with what Paul Heyman has done since the promotion was bought out. He's not happy with Ring of Honor being discarded and cast aside. A man very, very close to Paul Heyman, but a man who has a hell of a lot to say to him. And like he said, he'll be coming soon, so teasing something even bigger. Corino was the surprise, I suppose, but he's not a huge name in wrestling, whereas what we have planned next for this storyline is probably the biggest thing we've done so far in this series. Corino debuts as a spokesperson, getting an adequate rating, a 90 rating for somebody who's just debuting, obviously with Paul Heyman, who is always going to get you great ratings, but Corino improvises well, Paul Heyman improvises so well, and if it wasn't already obvious, that was the mirrored image segment of the promo that Paul Heyman did during the invasion in 2001 towards Vince McMahon, when he exposed all the hypocrisy of Vince McMahon, you could say. What he did to ECW, rebranding it the Attitude Era, we're looking to mirror that with Corino claiming that Ring of Honor and Evolve is basically him copying their ideas. If you've not seen that promo before, it's really worth seeking out, and hopefully it came across well. This storyline really is kicking into the next gear now as we finish the first hour on MTV. Returning for the second hour before the third match of the night, the Knockouts Tag Team Champions come out to join commentary. Angelina Love and Velvet Sky ensure that they get some screen time on the big premiere show, of course, and put themselves over as the greatest tag team on planet Earth. For those who haven't seen Impact before, they're looking at the two top women in the company. Love says that they're so far above every other team in the Knockouts division that Paul Heyman has had to bring in stars from all over the globe to face them. Sky adds that she hopes none of the teams are ugly because there's already enough ugly people in the Knockouts locker room, so the usual vacuous, vain, superficial personalities of the beautiful people putting over there. I just kept it pretty basic, but I'm sure they could come up with some other stuff to do with that. We then go into the third match of the night, which is Awesome Kong versus April Hunter, and I just think with Hunter being one of the bigger knockouts as well, putting her against Awesome Kong, likewise with what we saw earlier in the first match of the night, this shows that the Knockouts division is both very important and it's not the Divas division, to keep it pretty simple. That's the point I was getting at earlier. Awesome Kong defeats April Hunter with a sit-out powerbomb. During the match, April Hunter goes for a power slam on Awesome Kong, just teasing a potential big spot there, but pulls out her back. This is what allows Kong to take control and win the match in 7 minutes 12. A decent performance from Kong, not great from Hunter, just because she's not that over, and I really haven't been able to give her the push that I'd hoped to when she came in. Of course, there's plenty of time to repackage her and rebuild her character, but for now, she's putting over Awesome Kong, who stands tall in the ring after the match. The commentators, Angelina Love and Velvet Sky, now gone, put over April Hunter's failed attempt at the body slam, which ultimately cost her the match. As Kong has her arm raised, Madison Rayne comes out from the back, followed by the Amazon. Madison asks Kong if this is what she wanted as she sends the Amazon into the ring, getting physical for the first time. The two largest knockouts in history begin to brawl with nothing between the two women. At an opportune moment, Madison Rayne slides under the bottom rope and grabs Kong's leg. This momentary inconvenience allows the Amazon to throw a clothesline at Kong, taking her down. She catches Kong off guard, of course, and the move keeps Kong down on the canvas. The Amazon and Madison Rayne then leave together. The Queen of the Mountain happy with a job well done. An okay segment, not great, a little bit below average, but Madison Rayne coming out looking well. The Amazon performing poorly, which given how limited we know she is, isn't that surprising, but the idea here is to create some sort of special attraction. Kong and the Amazon in the same ring, getting physical for the first time, hopefully creating some intrigue for what could happen between them down the line, albeit it's not going to be some incredible in-ring masterpiece. You do still need some variety, of course. We then go into a video package which highlights Bryan Danielson's run in TNA so far. We really want to put him over as one of the most important members of the roster coming off Sacrifice, where we really try to give him a star-making moment. Hopefully that came across, and we put over that he has yet to be pinned or submitted since his debut at Bound for Glory, and at Sacrifice he picked up the biggest and most emphatic victory of his career yet, as he put the monster Abyss to sleep in a Monsters Ball match. The question that the video package poses is whether Bryan Danielson is ready to make the step up to the World Heavyweight Championship, after he suggested that even Kurt Angle couldn't match him inside the 6 sides, so he's trying to force his way into that title picture that is currently between Kurt Angle and Bobby Lashley, and we'll see how that develops. But before then, we have the fourth match of the night, and Kevin Steen is the one getting the showcase here against another hard hitter in Hernandez, so another competitive match, but Steen using either an eye poke or maybe a low blow when the referee is distracted. But the point being, it's not an entirely clean victory, but he does hit that package pile driver to put Hernandez down. A good match overall, decent wrestling and 2 okay performances. After the match, Steen rolls to the outside, picking up the LAX t-shirt that Hernandez had removed prior to the match and begins to tear it apart, showing the complete disrespect. The commentator's putting over that he has beaten all 3 members of LAX now, running out from the back. Amazing Red makes his return from injury, but Steen quickly rolls back out of the ring. However, as he begins to back up the ramp, he is stopped in his tracks by the third member of LAX, Homicide. He grabs Steen, rolls him back into the ring towards the member of LAX with the biggest issue with him, Amazing Red. He was taken out a few weeks ago, or maybe even a month ago now, by Steen, hitting him with a package pile driver on the apron, and Red hits a series of impressive high-flying moves. There's nobody who can do those fast-paced flippy moves better than Amazing Red, and he turns Steen inside out in the process, hitting a red eye to punctuate that athletic display. Amazing Red sends Steen to the outside. Homicide joins Red in the ring after this. They check on Hernandez, and the trio eventually stand tall, all proud to be representing LAX. The commentators put over that Red picked up a surprise victory over Kevin Steen a couple of months back. That's what sparked this rivalry. They're currently at 1 each in the records, so while Steen has defeated Hernandez and Homicide, he's tied with Amazing Red, and eventually we will see those two face off in a final one-on-one match. Back from the break, Kurt Angle, the World Heavyweight Champion, comes down to the ring. He was taken down by Bobby Lashley following last week's main event, but only as revenge for Kurt's actions at Sacrifice, where he took Lashley down. On both occasions, they'd been working together as a tag team, but again, it didn't work out, certainly after the bell. They won the matches, so not too bad. Kurt says that he did what he did at Sacrifice because if he didn't, Lashley would have done the same, and last week, Lashley proved that to him. He made it clear that he was still after the title, so to Angle, Lashley was an enemy. Lashley has a different take on this, suggesting that when Kurt Angle heard him even mention the title, it was a throwaway line in an interview, but he knows a shiver went down the spine of the World Heavyweight Champion. Seeing him up close and personal in the ring at Sacrifice, he knew this Lashley was a threat like no other he'd ever faced. He never did this before. He never attacked a potential future opponent because he's never felt fear like the fear he feels when he steps across from Lashley. So while these two have or seem to be developing some sort of mutual respect, Lashley here going straight for the throat, suggesting that Kurt Angle is afraid of him. The two go face to face, appearing close to agreeing on a match to face off against each other when Bryan Danielson comes out. He says that Bobby and Kurt might be happy to make their own matches, but that's not how it works. Lashley has had, one match since he returned, while Bryan has beaten an array of talents in that time, week after week. Whenever he's been needed, he's gone in the ring and he has beaten whoever was put in front of him, most recently at Sacrifice against the Monster Abyss. So he wants a shot at the World Heavyweight Championship, and he's not waiting at the back of the line. He obviously draws the attention away from the two men. Neither of them really want him to force his way into this because they're desperate to finally have their one-on-one match. They had their match at Slammiversary, then they had the match in January that was interrupted and destroyed by the New Age, so they really want to just have a one-on-one match to see who the better man is. But Bryan Danielson potentially looking to force his way into the picture there. A really good segment, gaining heat to Angle and Lashley's storyline, and all three men doing well with an 85 rating, happy with that. Heading to the office of Paul Heyman, we see the man in charge, who is still clearly reeling from Steve Corino's words earlier. Added on top of that is the volatile World Heavyweight Championship scene. It's clear that Heyman has a lot on his mind. He's still processing what we just saw from Bryan Danielson, and this is why he isn't best pleased to hear a knock at the door. He's even less happy when it is Mr. Anderson who walks into his office, followed by his friend Matt Morgan. Heyman asks what he wants, and Anderson acts offended that he doesn't even get a welcome back from the man in charge. However, he does go on to explain that he thinks that Paul Heyman needs help. He offered his assistance in dealing with the New Age a few months ago, but now with the ROH guys, he thinks Paul's got too much on his plate and he might be ready to reconsider, selling himself as the only man not too emotionally invested in TNA to make the right decision. Everybody else, you talk about AJ, Samoa Joe, the Forefathers, Kurt Angle, they are going to be blinded by the fact that they love TNA and by extension hate Ring of Honor and the New Age, whereas Anderson and Matt Morgan can keep their focus on whatever task is set to them. They can protect Paul Heyman. Paul's concern is what Anderson wants out of this. He's never once acted selflessly in all the years that Paul Heyman has known him, but Anderson says that isn't important now. All that's important is that Paul Heyman needs help, and he is willing to provide it from this moment forward. Heyman is reluctant, but tells the two men to take a seat. He's at least willing to hear them out, We don't see what happens as Mr. Anderson shuts the door behind him, but clearly a meeting between Paul Heyman, Mr. Anderson and Matt Morgan ongoing. So while Paul Heyman's better judgment would suggest not to trust Mr. Anderson, he is in a situation where he really doesn't have that many other people to turn to. We then come back to the main event, and a really good one, even with Austin Aries off his game. And I have to say, I'm pretty sure this could be the best show we've ever done, if not definitely the best Impact we've ever done. A superb match where AJ Styles and Wrestling's Greatest Tag Team defeat Austin Aries and the Wolves in 13 minutes and 32. The key here though, AJ Styles is the one who pins Austin Aries with a phenomenal forearm. We see in the individual ratings there that unsurprisingly AJ and Shelton are the two top performers, but Davey Richards must be noted. That 79 is so encouraging. Eddie and Aries also doing pretty well, and Haas not too bad either, gaining heat to 2 storylines, getting the crowd buzzing. This match probably couldn't have gone any better for us, if truth be told. The same can't be said for Austin Aries, however, who loses his first match in a TNA ring. He's the Ring of Honor World Champion, and he's just been pinned by a man who he claimed had no credentials to challenge for his championship. Well, maybe tonight is the night that changed. AJ is joined by his teammates Charlie Haas and Shelton Benjamin, and again, to showcase what TNA is all about, putting those 6 guys in the ring in the main event, I think immediately you know what to expect. 6 incredibly talented wrestlers, hard-hitting action, fast-paced, everything you'd want when trying to show new viewers that this is the alternative. After a torrid spell for TNA in their war with Ring of Honor, everything seems to have gone the way of ROH. Impact ends this show at least with a moment of celebration for the man who debuted in his home company in the first ever match TNA put on. That's AJ Styles, of course. While WGTC are only recent additions to the roster, they too are delighted with their team's win. Mauro and Taz sign off on the show, noting that AJ Styles had previously been refused the chance to challenge for Austin Aries' Ring of Honor World Championship. Well, tonight, he's made a huge claim towards getting just that, having cleanly pinned Austin Aries in the middle of the ring, albeit catching him off guard. The phenomenal forearm, as we know, does come out of nowhere. However, with the words of Steve Corino still ringing in the ears of Paul Heyman, it's clear that we are very much still in the midst of a very trying time for TNA, and this is very much just the beginning of things to come in regards to the troubles, the ongoing issues between Ring of Honor and TNA. But an 82 rating, so I'm not sure if that's the best Impact we've done. It probably is. I'll check after the show. Increasing our popularity in 20 regions on the new network. I don't think it could have gone much better than that, and we need to follow that up with the next episode of TNA Evolve. These shows are more important than ever now. Previously, Evolve was kind of not must-see TV, I suppose, whereas now, in this build to Slammiversary, we've got so many storylines and so many wrestlers on the roster, to be fair, that we need all 3 hours every week to continue to tell those stories for Slammiversary, and that's what we'll go into right now. And Evolve begins with a recap of what we've just seen at the end of Impact, but also added on to the end is the furious post-show reaction from Austin Aries. The cameras caught up with him in the back, and he was just absolutely livid, but he did tell AJ Styles and TNA to enjoy their moment because things aren't going to be good for long for TNA. Of course, what Steve Corino had to say to Paul Heyman, the tease of what is coming next, and Aries is just continuing to push that story forward. Paul London defeats Colt Cabana in 11 minutes and 6 by submission with the single leg Boston Crab. We've given him that move. I don't think London ever really had a submission finisher during his career, but I think with his new character we're developing, it's going to be a good addition where he can really push that knee into the back of the neck and put a lot of suffering onto his opponents. And again, he's talking trash to El Generico, who is at ringside as Cabana rolls out. Another decisive win for Paul London, who has become a little bit of a bully in recent weeks since he lost his friend Brian Kendrick to injury. Sarah Del Rey is then interviewed, answering the challenge of Mickie James from Impact by confirming that Paul Heyman has made that match and she is ready for Mickie James at Slammiversary. The interview is then cut off by Alyssa Flash, who is of course still furious after what happened at Sacrifice, and she wants Del Rey to pass on a message to Daisy Hayes. She wants her next week on Impact, and continuing to develop the face turn for Alyssa Flash, who has pretty much distance herself from the New Age since her fellow New Age members screwed her at the pay-per-view. You certainly can't blame her for that. But she's then straight into action. She cuts off that interview on her way to the ring before going and picking up a victory over Jazz in 6 minutes and 24. A Flash driver, a decent performance from Flash, and I think that when we do turn her face, we're going to see even better performances from her. After the match, she says that when she faces Daisy Hayes next week on Impact, she demands that Mischief comes to ringside. She wants her to see what she's going to do to Daisy Hayes and to prove where her loyalties lie. Of course, the two women were very close friends, were former tag team champions, and are the longest serving members of the New Age, and Mischief grabbed her hair and screwed her at Sacrifice. So an even more personal rivalry with Mischief. You could argue that the others were all together as part of the project, as part of the bigger thing, but there was already a pre-existing relationship between Flash and Mischief that makes this particular part of the storyline personal to Flash. We then get a promo from Larry Sweeney, who has had an answer. He's confirmed that the Young Bucks will face Yoshihashi and Okada next week, right here on this show. We then have Samoa Joe come down to the ring, and really I did this so that we'd have one of them big rated segments, and 89 is absolutely fantastic. He demands to know what's happening in the company. It seems like AJ Styles is next in line for a shot at Aries, even though Joe was screwed at the pay-per-view. Slammiversary around the corner. What is there for Joe? And Paul Heyman basically tries to placate him, telling him that at Slammiversary there'll be a King of the Mountain match. Others will need to qualify, but because of what happened at Sacrifice, he accepts that Samoa Joe deserves an opportunity. Joe wants to know what the King of the Mountain is for. Is it number one contendership? Is it something else? Heyman says that the first Evolve Championship match will take place at Slammiversary, and Joe is the first man entered into that match. A 5-way or maybe a 6-way, I haven't quite decided, King of the Mountain match to crown the first Evolve champion at Slammiversary. I mentioned this last year, but I don't do the reverse ladder stipulation for King of the Mountain because I just think it comes across as silly. They still have the penalty boxes, still have the pinfall to qualify, but the way you win the title is by pulling it down and not hanging it up, because yeah, that's just silly. Before the main event, the Forefathers sit down to give their opinions on the current state of TNA. Of course, they're in that funny tweener position now where they're representing TNA, but they've been very, very heelish for a very, very long time. And we didn't script this, we just wanted this to kind of have a bit of a personal touch, them explaining what TNA means to them, and I thought that they'd be able to put it across better than anything I could potentially write in there. And it's a fairly basic segment of just them talking about how important it is that they continue to resist Ring of Honor. We then get an incredible main event. I really didn't expect it to be that good. That is so good and shows the value that Loki has brought to this roster and to this X Division. He defeats Sonjay Dutt, who, of course, we have to give credit to as well, in 12 minutes and 45 with a Warrior's Way. What a brilliant main event for Evolve. No surprise with these two, to be fair. Delighted with that, basically, and Loki stands tall. There's no doubt now that he is ready for Tyler Black at Slammiversary, if there ever was. I think that's going to be a fantastic one-on-one match. There's always the temptation on these big shows to put maybe a multi-man for the X Division title, but I just feel like the idea, Loki versus Tyler Black, it really just has a really good ring to it to me. Sometimes matches just sound like they click and you can envisage them being these incredible bouts, and that's exactly what that does for me. I might be alone in that, but that's partly why I'm looking forward to that match at Slammiversary so much. Oh shit. Right, so this is pretty we were in a bidding war with Noah, and I thought Bobby Lashley was going to renew his contract. What we'd offered him, he said that ours was the better offer, but he signed with Noah on an exclusive written deal. Right. I'm going to end the episode there because that's really, really, really screwed things up going forward. Thank you for watching. I suppose plans change, but he'll still be here for the pay-per-view, thankfully. But I'm going to have to rewrite the next 2 episodes of Impact and my plans going forward. Not to give a spoiler of what was going to happen at Slammiversary, but it ain't happening now. Yeah, that's a nightmare. Thanks for watching. yeah, we'll see what we come up with for next week's episode. Cheers.